Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. Let's start from the front lines review. There is the heavy battle now ongoing in the Kharkiv Oblast. From the information I got, both of the sides went an attack almost simultaneously. At first it was the Russian side, they went an attack with light armored vehicles and some of the infantry forces, but they were met with strong Ukrainian resistance. And for this hour while I'm filming this video, Ukraine tries to get initiative and go to Hliboko settlement. That's what our officer writes about the situation in this direction. The activity of the enemy in this flank was forecasted before. They used the poor visibility weather conditions, basically fog, to cover their forces from the drone strike, and by doing so they tried to get control over some of the Ukrainian positions with defense lines. For now we don't have the information that Ukraine lost the control over the ground in this direction. We are monitoring the situation, so for now no one knows what is the outcome of this particular operation, but the heavy fighting is being reported, and as we know, the FPV drone usage plays a great role in this war, especially for Ukraine, because Ukraine has much less artillery systems compared to Russian Federation, so our fighters rely on drones a lot. On the deep state military map update, we don't have any movement for this hour, but we're gonna check it tomorrow. Yes guys, I'm starting this video from the military map update because I have some of the information to share with you. For example, I got more information from this direction where Russia crossed the Oskil River using the rubber boats, as I said to you in my previous videos. Well, according to the recent data, this group of the Russian armed forces counts not more than 20 people there. Like, everything might change in a matter of hours in this direction, but Russians managed to cross just with a small infantry forces. However, it was enough for them to cover the nearby forest lines, and now they keep the defense. What is also bad now that the weather, as I say to you, in most of the directions of the northern and eastern front lines deteriorated quite a lot. Especially during the morning time, fog helps Russian army a lot. For example, they used again those bad weather conditions to transit from one shore to another without being spotted. And it's just impossible to fly the drone without the visual reference. You need to have some kind of the visibility. It is not the first time Russia is using these tactics, and unfortunately not for the last time. In the Kharkiv region we see how Russia tries to cut the large group of the Ukrainian armed forces, basically taking Ukrainian troops into some sort of the clouds, their usual tactics, but they cannot cope with it because still there are some of the bridges okay through the Kharkiv city. Russia doesn't want to destroy those because they foresee that they finally get part of the Kharkiv under control and may go and advance across the Oskil River in this direction, continue their assault operation. For that they need the robust bridge. Well, like one more option, they also may create some sort of the pontoon bridge in this area north from Kupiansk, but in that case they need to create a large bridgehead not to allow to Ukraine to destroy the bridge while they're sending their forces across it. Well, in that case they may destroy the supply line which is connecting the Ukrainian army to this side. But for now the bridge is fine, and those are the good news for Ukraine actually. Well, if Russia after all takes this entire place, Ukraine has the option to cut the bridge for Russia for the further advancement. Strangely, but situation is kind of calm for the recent days in Chasiv Yar and also in Toretsk. There was the movement for the last week, but not significant, and for a few days Russia is, I wouldn't say it's calm totally, the battle is ongoing, but Russia is unable to take more ground. The hottest spot now is in Kurakhove and also Pakros direction. Russia is assaulting with this new assault wagon. However, for the last 24 hours there were no any changes here, as well as there is no change in Kurakhove. But I'm not very optimistic about Kurakhove and this entire front lines. Our military commanders as well. One of the commanders shares the information that he doesn't see the positive scenario for Ukraine in all of this pocket. He also told that Russians went to Romanivka, so they're controlling this village. I wonder about the Ukrainian forces in this settlement, whether they were able to move out at the proper time. So this military map shows some of the delay. The real picture is a little worse for Ukrainian army in all of those villages. About the Kurakhove settlement, yeah, you see the picture, even on a deep state military map source. Russians already went to the western side of the settlement. It means that the battle is ongoing in entire Kharkiv. Our commander in the place says that probably our military command doesn't know how to take the situation under control because the Ukrainian defense in this side starts to break down significantly. So it's just up to local commanders to organize the defense, but you know they have communication problems as well. I mean, the entire Ukrainian army structure is not ideal. We have separate brigades, separate regiments, which sometimes, or it's better to say in most of the cases, have communication problems between each other. So the regiment which is deployed in Kharkiv may not obtain the proper information, for example, from the brigade which is deployed in this side. For example, may go from this side and attack this brigade from the back. So those guys wouldn't know that this brigade, for example, left the positions to Andriivka. It happened already many times like that in Ukrainian army throughout this war, and luckily we have some of the command change and the prospects for the change of the entire Ukrainian army system. There should be armies and divisions formed from all of those brigades and regiments, because now the local commanders fight on their own, not knowing what is happening elsewhere. It's the open problem our influencers, volunteers and military, and also military command part of it, calls for Zelensky and Syrsky to change the structure of Ukrainian army for a very long time, actually since 2022. And bad news we have from Velika Novosilka, so it was yesterday and it is today. Russians performed successful attack towards Novy Komar village. And by doing so, they cut two very important supply roads for Ukrainian armed forces in Velika Novosilka. So the only supply route which might help Ukraine is this one. It goes from Novosilka to Velika Novosilka, but again it's very close to the front lines in this direction, so Russians might use some of the mortars, artillery or maybe FPV drones to hit the Ukrainian army military supplies. By the way, my friends, if you want to support the job that I do here on YouTube, you might follow me on Patreon. The link for my page I'll put just in the video description below. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation. Alright guys, I have just received more information about this particular battle, which was really hard. So Russians tried to offense with two of the BMPs, right? You see those burning on this image. It means that definitely Russia lost three of the armored vehicles and some of the infantry. However, those vehicles were able to land the paratroopers of the Russian army, and they're hiding somewhere in the place. Ukrainian FPV drones now able to fly because the weather is good now. So with the help of the thermal cameras, they will be detected during the night time. Good news actually for Ukraine. So Ukraine didn't go on offensive, but used some of the tanks, armored vehicles to repel this attack from the Russian side, because it happened during the morning time. Then there was the fog, and the only two Ukraine is capable to use there is the artillery basically and those tanks. Alright, and we have the images from the northern part of the Kharkiv region showing the Russian armored vehicles burning. So the weather improved definitely, and Ukrainian FPV drones hit the enemy vehicles. Yeah, this picture is funny. So Scholz visits Kiev today. It is his first visit for the last 2.5 years. I guess Scholz visited Ukraine at the very beginning of the war together with some of the other leaders. Well, the good news that Scholz came with some of the military package for Ukraine. The military support of Ukraine will be increased by 600 with something million euros, which is quite a lot. So Ukraine will obtain 6 more IRST systems, which help with air defense, helicopters, Sea King, which are used for the transportation of some of the goods, armament around. The Patriot launchers, just to remind you, Ukraine lost some of the launchers in this war, and also Gepard air defense systems, which help a lot against the Shahid drones. So luckily Germany stays the reliable and the second largest supporter of Ukraine after the United States of America. The only thing that Scholz doesn't want to transfer the Taurus cruise missiles, which will not be the game changer for Ukraine, but might help Ukraine to reduce the Russian attacks on its territory by hitting the supplies deep inside the Russian lands, their command posts, their fuel depots and ammunition depots. Everything of that could be hit by Taurus. So why does Chancellor Scholz is so fluffy with this Taurus? Why he doesn't want to supply those to Ukraine? Well, basically, potentially, this could be the longest weaponry Ukrainian army may obtain, because there is no way you can lower the range of Taurus. The range of it is more than 500 kilometers. and potentially this cruise missile may fly even further. So Chancellor doesn't want to be alone in that some sort of the escalation. Well, at the same time, Zelensky asked obviously for more military support for Ukraine, and definitely it is needed, because you cannot fight just with infantry against the Russian infantry. Russia has more of those forces, so Ukraine needs advanced weaponry. For the first time, Ukraine showed some of the Shahid drone modification presented to Chancellor Scholz here. Yes, it looks like the Russian Shahid drone, but it is not. After all, it is at least 2 times smaller. And from what I can see, it has the electrical engine, so the range of it is quite limited. Maybe like the short-range destruction drone, it could work, but in this case, I think FPV could be even better. Because for the similar range, the FPV drone is much smaller. And the new so-called FAT modifications of the FPV drones, which Ukrainian army obtained from our volunteers, may fly for the range up to 20 kilometers. And judging on this drone, I don't think that it may fly for much further. Well, Ukraine also for the first time showed its analog of the Lancet drone. Well, this could be more interesting, but there is the big question whether Ukraine is capable to produce those drones massively, because Russia has the massive production of the Lancet drones. They produce those by hundreds actually, the Shahid drones as well. But here I have some certain doubts whether Ukraine has enough capabilities. I guess like an option it could be to start the production of those unique drones somewhere in Germany, and let's say Germany takes the part of the drones for themselves and the vast part they send to Ukraine. It will benefit the German army or any other NATO country army as well as the Ukrainian one, because in Europe it's much safer to produce those drones and Europe has more capabilities, plus they will be ready for the possible conflicts in the future with their enemies. Great news from the United States of America. There will be new military package introduced to support Ukraine. So the current White House administration does everything to supply Ukraine with as much weaponry as possible until Donald Trump gets into the office of the White House. So they expect that probably the military support of Ukraine could be cut by the Donald Trump's administration. Well, it is good that Ukraine receives the support from the United States, but after all, it's not enough, and the policy of not to escalate actually brought more losses for Ukrainian army. There was the article published by the Washington Post about the military support of Ukraine, and also in this article they say that Biden's administration is kind of frustrated that the Ukraine doesn't want to lower the conscription age for the youngsters. Now the age limit is 25 years old, and our allies want to force Ukraine to lower it down to 18 years old. Again, the same feature I told you yesterday, and here we have the article about it published by the Washington Post. Well, I already explained you that this attitude towards Ukraine and its people is kind of frustrating for us, for Ukrainians. There are tons of the negative comments under this article from Ukrainian side, because basically Ukrainians are forced to fight with prevailing enemy using the same tactics as Russia uses nowadays, so mid waves. Why? Well, simply because Ukraine is out of the weaponry to conquer the Russian attacks. The policy of de-escalation and the limited support of Ukraine was the wrong one, and from this perspective we already see it. So now Ukraine has been pushed to use its very limited and the most precious resource, like very young people, to fight on the front lines. It will cancel the future development of the country. So what's the point really to fight in this case, in case Ukraine will be kaputted? Because you will just waste your people against the Russian midwaves and that's it. So at first our allies like United States, UK and Russia, by the way, the countries which signed the memorandum, say to Ukraine, okay, give up your nukes, give up your nukes. And now the part of our allies, like the Biden's administration, it's the face of our ally, at least for now, they're saying to Ukraine, okay, we took your nukes, and we're not gonna give you the all weaponry you need to fight against Russia, but please waste your kids, because 18 years old, I consider it's not the age to fight, actually. And you know, we may have different attitude towards Zelensky, but luckily he is not lowering this age limit, so the conscription service for Ukraine is from 25 and above. Because as I told you yesterday and probably the day before yesterday, it's just useless to fight Russia with the midwaves. There was also the Trump's administration plan of the ceasefire in Ukraine published today. Well, it's hard for me to call it a plan, rather it is a fantasy. This plan was presented in April 2024, so many months ago. The ex-General Kellogg, who is already appointed by Donald Trump for mediation position between Ukraine and Russia for those negotiations, presented it. So the first point we have here is ending Russia's political isolation, establishing diplomatic contact with Moscow, and ceasing the demonization of Putin. So we should call that Putin is not our enemy, Putin is our friend or partner. How nice is that? It already gives me the clue that Donald Trump's administration doesn't give about the foreign policy, especially Ukraine. They don't understand anything. And you know, guys, after all, they will be punished, yes, by Putin. I mean, not the nuclear war, but Putin will show his real demonization. Right, it sounds cringy, but let's continue with the other one. Applying pressure both on Moscow and Kyiv to implement a ceasefire and commence peace negotiations. That sounds more or less okay, that would do. In number 3, they want to delay the Ukrainian NATO membership for the longer period, perhaps 10 years. So no robust security guarantees for Ukraine. Russia retains currently occupied Ukrainian territories. Yes, they do it now. They occupied part of the Ukrainian territories, but you know what? They want more. What they do with this one, they basically encourage Putin to attack Ukraine once again, because there were some of the small sanctions applied on Russia. Then Russia occupied Crimea, Donbass, part of Donbass, and now they started the full-scale war with tons of the casualties. Robust sanctions were applied on the Russian economy, and now what they want to do is to lift the sanctions. Partially, but it will open the opportunities for the Russian economy to receive more funds and to basically fund its military to prepare for the future war, which will immediately take place in Ukraine, and in this case not only. Putin will say that demonization is finished, sanctions lifted, he's the respected politician worldwide, so why not to continue? So it's basically the encouraging for the new big war. Here they also put the prospect of full sanctions relief. Full sanctions will be lifted by Trump's administration, normalization of relations. Here they put the contingent of Russia agreeing on peace deal acceptable by Ukraine. So if Ukraine accepts the peace deal, all of the sanctions will be lifted and Donald Trump will kiss with Putin. Next, the pressure on Moscow would come from the United States' continued military support of Ukraine, strengthening its defense capabilities. And you know what? 1 hour ago, Lavrov, the foreign ministry of Russia, already replied on that statement. He said that Russia will never support any sort of the peace initiatives which are letting Ukraine to get more weapons, including the long-range weapon which could be used against the Russian Federation. So they're looking for sincere peace, as he said, which basically means that Ukraine should recognize the occupied Russian territories, give more territories to Russia, I guess, also voluntarily withdraw its forces from the remaining of the Donetsk, Kherson, Luhansk, and what else, Zaporizhia Oblast, give up its army, perform denazification, and only after that Russia may start talking. That's why I'm not calling it a plan. There is no strategic meaning of it if Russia doesn't want to negotiate with Ukraine. So Ukraine received long-term security guarantees, primarily bilateral. Again, what kind of the strengthening of Ukrainian military support? What do they mean by that? What kind of the security guarantees? We already know the destiny of the Budapest Memorandum. It's basically the piece of paper. There is no other guarantee exists than NATO. So NATO membership is the only robust security guarantee for Ukraine, nothing more. Zelensky actually said it right. The 5th article shouldn't apply on those territories which Russia has occupied, but if Russia wants to go further, yes, the 5th article should be applied. Yes, that's the guarantee. But here, those are just the words again. The 5th point goes for pushing Ukraine. So Ukraine would not have formally recognized Russia's annexation, but would commit not to attempt to change the current status quo by force. So only diplomatic way. And President Zelensky already said about it many of the times, including Crimea. So Ukraine is looking just for a diplomatic way. And please take us to NATO, and we are not looking looking for any sort of the military force or something. The plan does not impose other restrictions on Ukrainian sovereignty. Alright, so Kyiv continues to receive United States military assistance, potentially in the form of interest-free loans and vague security guarantees. Again, what we see over here, so long-term security guarantees and military support, they just copy-pasted with different words in this part. Tariffs would be placed on Russian energy export with the proceeds allocated for the reconstruction of Ukraine. So Russia will pay their reparations by a percentage of the sales from their oil or gas, uranium, wherever they sell. The idea is kind of interesting, but why would Russia agree on that? Why would Russia agree on this plan in general? Like, they're already controlling that territory, they want more, and Trump proposes them to freeze the war. So what's the benefit for Russia? The end of demonization of Putin? Putin maybe would like to join this international political circuit once again, like G7 for example. Well, the only thing which Russia might be satisfied is lifting the sanctions actually. So Russia may sell their oil, gas, get more funds to their economy, save it basically because there is the crisis in the Russian economy, get more funds into their military and attack Ukraine again, because after all, you know, sanctions will be lifted anyways. They just need to stop for a while, you know, wait, then some of the politicians across the ocean will say, okay, we're lifting the sanctions, they're now peaceful, and they start again, and it will be the endless war. That's why I'm saying that this document was created in the world of the pink ponies. And number 6 of this document is very interesting. I think it will be easily implemented by Donald Trump's administration. So pressure on Kyiv would come from the possibility that the United States may halt military aid to Ukraine if Kyiv refuses to engage in peace talks with Moscow. So actually United States, yes, they may easily pressure Kyiv in this case, but not Russia. So commentary says, despite its declared intentions, the proposal is not a compromise. Russia gains through the lesson desired, while Ukraine primarily loses. I see it like it is. Although it claims Kyiv to offer negotiations, form of position strengthening, the pressure to quick settlement favors Moscow, and it would exploit this to dictate terms. So there are lots of the comments. I already shared this document on my Telegram channel, just 2 of the pages, so you may spend your time reading it. So it's based on Kellogg, Flights, America First, Russia and Ukraine, 11th April 2024. The interesting comment is here, there are no specific or credible penalties for Moscow in the event of breach of the agreement, which is almost certain to occur sooner or later. So they basically say here in the document that Russia, Moscow will breach the agreement. It is almost certain to occur sooner or later. So Russia will start the new war in Ukraine once again, 100%, like 1000%. They're sure about it. And even in this document, in the comment section, they say like that. Guys, sorry that I spent so much time reviewing this document, but at least we have some of the real document published by media, and we need to speak about it because we need to forecast the possible future for Ukrainians and basically for the future of the security in the world. Because for Russia, the war in Ukraine is not just the war in Ukraine. No, they're looking to restore their empire. Ukraine is just a step to expand the influence of the Russian Federation and basically of the global dictators like in China, Iran, North Korea. That's why they're so united. By the way, in the Russian media, they published this kind of the map. They already put this occupied territory and even more to the territory of Russia. And they say that Poland, UK, Germany, Romania will occupy Ukraine. So they say that it's the NATO's plan to divide Ukraine. The source is the Russian Foreign Intelligence. Yes, in the Russian official propaganda media, you'll have the most of the cringe. Meanwhile, some of the forces, I just call them Syrian rebels, are capturing more and more equipment from the government army of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. There are tons of the trucks, tanks, armored vehicles, airplanes, everything of that will go to serve for the new power. And here they found the T-72, and there was the case even with T-90, which Russian Federation supplied to the Assad regime. As for the military map, well, the remains of the Syrian army left Aleppo today. The local commanders just negotiated with rebels to give them the free corridor to leave the place. So basically there were no significant fights for Aleppo. The Syrian army just ran away like Ahmad battalion. If you look at this bigger map, well, Aleppo is over here and those vast territories were taken by the rebels and here probably by the Kurd army. There are lots of the armies movements in Syria, so it's very hard to define who is where and who is who actually. But what we know that rebels are very close to Hama and Assad army really takes the defense in the settlement. Yesterday they even pushed with some sort of the counterattack. So idea for rebels actually to take control over Hama, go to Homs and to cut the Russian army with their military base in this region. Well, Syria is very big, but only the part of it is populated because the vast lands over here, well, this is basically the desert. You may judge it on the road, so here's just view of the highways and here are many roads with more settlements. So for the rebels, the main fight will happen here, or it is happening already. So far, the biggest airplane the rebels were able to capture is MiG-23, the old fighter jet, or multi-purpose, you may call it, airplane. I wonder if it's airworthy or no, but it is hidden inside the hangar. Probably it could be restored or no. Well, they will see it. Well, the tires are not flat, so I guess it wasn't used. Maybe it wasn't a maintenance, so they will see if they can restore it. For now, rebels captured many of the L-39 Albatros airplanes. Those are training and combat airplanes. Sorry, the last time I called those Dolphins. No, L-29 is Dolphin, L-39 is Albatros. Yes, it was my mistake. Well, this particular unit, I think, wasn't flying for a very long time, so it requires a really hard maintenance. But you know, even without the airplanes, rebels already captured lots and lots of the weaponry plus artillery systems, so absolutely they'll have more power. And yes, this is the T-90 tank I was telling you about, also captured. Well, Iran shows this kind of the video of how they send some of the reinforcements to help the Assad army. So the recent breakthrough of rebels doesn't necessarily mean the capitulation of the Assad regime. At this point, he still has some of the tools to try to stay in power. Well, my friends, I'm gonna keep you updated on the situation in Ukraine, and not only. For now, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot, and as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.